We're just getting these live shots of the American President Joe Biden, who's arrived at the venue where the Quad Summit will, of course, take place in just a few moments from now. We earlier saw the Indian Prime Minister also make his way at the venue where the Quad Summit is to be held. He was received by the Japanese leader Fumio Kishida. This, remember, is a crucial summit meeting of the four leaders of the Quad nations: India, Australia, Japan and the United States of America. Quad is not a military alliance. This is a forum, a grouping of four democracies that have, of course, come together to establish certain stated common objectives. Firstly, the objective of Quad, the reason why it was brought into existence was to counter China, and then there are a whole host of different issues. Quad is interested in ensuring that vaccines are, of course, made available. There are several points on which these four nations have agreed upon, like combating cyber security and cybercrime, and there are a whole host of different issues which these four leaders will, of course, be sitting down to discuss. There we see the Indian Prime Minister and also the newly appointed Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese there, meeting with the American President Joe Biden. So these are the four leaders of the Quad grouping: Australia, the United States, Japan and India. They'll be sitting down for talks in just a few moments from now. The leaders are, of course, waving to the cameras before they go in for the crucial talks. Remember, the Quad is not a military alliance. We need to keep specifying this. The Quad is essentially a grouping, a forum of nations that have come together with certain stated clear objectives. And one of the key objectives, of course, is to counter the rise of a belligerent China. And apart from this, these four nations have got several issues on which they agree upon and will work further. And these include vaccines, infrastructure, climate change and critical and emerging technologies. And one of the key aspects is to try and ensure a free and an open Indo-Pacific. And this is a meeting of the Quad that is also happening at a very crucial time. This is happening during the time when Russia has, of course, invaded into Ukraine. And we expect a whole host of issues will, of course, come up for discussion. But the Ukraine war is likely to dominate the talks. Apart from this, there's also this Indo-Pacific economic framework that was, of course, announced by the American President Joe Biden. How successful will this framework be is something that remains to be seen, because the Indo-Pacific economic framework is not defined by any treaties or any tariffs that will be put in place, but rather it is based on the mutual cooperation and mutual understanding between two separate nations. So we expect the meeting of the Quad leaders to begin in just a few moments from now. The leaders, of course, arrived at the venue. A very crucial meeting that will, of course, take place between the leaders of the four democracies: the United States, Japan, Australia and India. So there we see the four leaders, of course, making their way to the venue where they'll be sitting across the table facing each other and will be talking about a whole host of different issues. And also, to give us more insights in terms of what this meeting, of course, means, we're joined in by Nicole Berner-Schmitz, who's a political consultant. Now, Nicole, this, of course, is a very crucial meeting of the four leaders of India, Japan, Australia and the United States. Quad is not a military alliance, but it is a forum of four democracies that, of course, has been brought into existence to counter a belligerent China. My question to you, of course, is how successful do you think has the Quad been in sending out a message of a united front against any belligerence that China may have exhibited in the recent years?
Well, I think they've done a really good job so far of doing so. I mean, this is an informal alliance, technically, right? And yet we see China responding to it every time that they convene. And that response has become sharper and stronger. It began by saying they were going to disappear like sea foam. Then it was they were becoming an Asian NATO. And now most recently, even stronger critiques. So China's paying attention, which is a big part of what these four nations are doing. They're not going to necessarily call...
日本まで足を運んでいただいたこと、心からアルバニージー首相に感謝を申し上げたいと思います。昨年来、ジョーのリーダーシップにより、4カ国の首脳はたびたび会合の機会を持ってきました。本年、日本が論を決断、こうして東京で首脳会合を実現できたことを大変嬉しく思っています。昨年9月の会合以降、
Okay, it doesn't make sense to. Yeah.
ロシアによるウクライナ侵略は、国連憲章でも謳われている諸原則への真っ向からの挑戦です。我々はインド太平洋地域で同じようなことを起こしてはなりません。こうした厳しい情勢の中だからこそ、我々が一堂に会して、4カ国の連帯と自由で開かれたインド太平洋という共通のビジョンへの強固なコミットメントを国際社会に示す意義、これは極めて大きいと考えます。本日は対面であることを生かして、国際情勢や地域情勢について率直な意見交換を行うことを楽しみにしています。同時に地域諸国と共に歩むことなしに日米豪印協力の成功は意見交換を行うことを楽しみにしています。situations 地域諸国と共に歩む地域が直面する喫緊の課題の解決に資するように協力を一層進めていく必要があります。本会合ではこれまで進めてきた幅広い分野の実践的協力の具体的進展を確認するとともに地域の気候変動対策支援
Urgent issues facing the region. During this meeting, I wish to clarify the concrete progress of practical cooperation that we have to discuss new areas of cooperation such as assisting in regional climate change countermeasure, maritime domain awareness, as well as humanitarian aid, disaster relief. Now, first of all, may I
Well, Prime Minister Kishida, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, firstly, can I thank you for your sincere congratulations on my election as Australia's 31st Prime Minister. It is an honour that this is my first act as Prime Minister to attend this important Quad Leaders meeting here in Japan. And as we gather today, I acknowledge all that the Quad has achieved. Standing together for a free, open and resilient Indo-Pacific region and working together to tackle the biggest challenges of our time, including climate change and the security of our region. My government is committed to working with your countries and we are committed to the Quad. The new Australian government's priorities align with the Quad agenda, taking action on climate change and building a stronger and more resilient Indo-Pacific region through better economic security, better cyber security, better energy security and better environmental and health security. Our cooperation is built on the values that we share: a commitment to representative democracy, the rule of law, and the right to live in peace. Today we look ahead to the work we're yet to do. As the Indo-Pacific is reshaped, our Quad partnership is needed now more than ever to meet the challenges and threats of a less certain world, to shape that world for the better, and build a stronger, more cooperative Indo-Pacific region that respects sovereignty. The region is looking to us to work with them and to lead by example. That's why my government will take ambitious action on climate change and increase our support to partners in the region as they work to address it, including with new finance. We will act in recognition that climate change is the main economic and security challenge for the island countries of the Pacific. Under my government, Australia will set a new target to reduce emissions by 43% by 2030, putting us on track for net zero by 2050. We have had a change of government in Australia, but Australia's commitment to the Quad has not changed and will not change. And our commitment to ASEAN and its centrality has not changed. My government has already committed to a greater focus on Southeast Asia, including the appointment of a special envoy for the region and $470 million in additional foreign aid over the next 4 years. This is in addition to our increasing assistance to the Pacific by over $500 million, deepening our defence and maritime cooperation and using the power of proximity to strengthen our partnerships. We will bring more energy and more resources to securing our region as we enter a new and more complex phase in the Pacific's strategic environment. And we will continue to stand with you, our like-minded friends. And collectively, we will continue to stand up for each other. We will stand firm on our values and our beliefs, on what we know will enhance the stability and prosperity of our region, and what is firmly in the interests of all those who call the Indo-Pacific home. I'm honoured to be among such close friends of Australia, to take these next steps with you to pursue positive and practical ways to support a free, open and resilient Indo-Pacific. I look forward to strengthening our Quad partnership, starting with a productive meeting today. And I'm delighted to hand over to Prime Minister Modi.
はい、アルバニージー首相ありがとうございました。では次はモディ首相よろしくお願いします。
Your Excellencies, प्रधानमंत्री किशिदा, प्रधानमंत्री एंथनी अल्बनीजी और राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन, प्रधानमंत्री किशिदा, आपके शानदार आतिथ्य के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आज टोक्यो में मित्रों के बीच होना मेरे लिए बहुत खुशी की बात है। मैं सबसे पहले प्रधानमंत्री एंथनी अल्बनीजी चुनावों में विजय के लिए आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई, बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं। शपथ लेने के 24 घंटे के बाद ही आपका हमारे बीच होना क्वाड मित्रता की ताकत और इसके प्रति आपकी प्रतिबद्धता को दिखाता है। एक्सेलेंसीज, इतने कम समय में क्वाड समूह ने विश्व पटल पर एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान बना लिया है। आज क्वाड का स्कोप व्यापक हो गया है और स्वरूप प्रभावी हो गया है। हमारा आपसी विश्वास, हमारा डिटर्मिनेशन लोकतांत्रिक शक्तियों को नई ऊर्जा और उत्साह दे रहा है। क्वाड के स्तर पर हमारे आपसी सहयोग से एक फ्री, ओपन और इंक्लूसिव इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र को प्रोत्साहन मिल रहा है, जो हम सभी का साझा उद्देश्य है। कोविड-19 की विपरीत परिस्थितियों के बावजूद हमने वैक्सीन डिलीवरी, क्लाइमेट एक्शन, सप्लाई चेन रेजिलियंस, डिजास्टर रिस्पांस और आर्थिक सहयोग जैसे कई क्षेत्रों में आपसी समन्वय बढ़ाया है। इससे इंडो पैसिफिक में शांति, समृद्धि और स्थिरता सुनिश्चित हो रही है। क्वाड इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के लिए एक कंस्ट्रक्टिव एजेंडा लेकर चल रहा है। इससे क्वाड की छवि एक फोर्स फॉर गुड के रूप में और भी सुदृढ़ होती जाएगी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
はい、モディ氏はありがとうございました。それでは続いて、バイデン大統領、ジョーよろしくお願いします。
It's wonderful to be together with friends and at this transformative moment in the world, and we are at a transformative moment. Prime Minister Kishida, I want to commend you for the extraordinary leadership that over the past few months that you've shown and for the gracious way in which you've hosted all of us. And Prime Minister Modi, it's wonderful to see you again in person. Thank you for your continuing commitment to making sure democracies deliver. If you fall asleep while you're here, it's okay. Because I don't know how you're doing it, but it's really quite extraordinary. Just getting off the campaign trail as well. Congratulations on your election. As I told you when you won, I called you that we greatly appreciate your commitment of being here so soon after taking office. Quad leaders met for the first time just over 1 year ago. It seems longer, but today our partnership is central to achieving our goals and critical for the foundation of our continuing cooperation, in my view. We already accomplished a great deal, as was referenced earlier, cooperating on COVID-19 response and health security, more to do to state the obvious, partnering on 5G and technology supply chains, technology standard setting, and launching our Quad Fellowship Program, which I think is going to make a difference, which we talked about earlier. At the same time, we're navigating a dark hour in our shared history. The Russian brutal and unprovoked war against Ukraine has triggered a humanitarian catastrophe, and innocent civilians have killed in the streets, and millions of refugees are internally displaced as well as exiled. And this is more than just a European issue. It's a global issue. The fact is that if you turn on the television and you'll see what Russia's doing now, it appears to me that Putin is just trying to extinguish a culture. He's not even aiming at military targets anymore. He's taking out every school, every church, every natural history museum, as if to try to obliterate the Ukrainian culture. And the world has to deal with it, and we are. The global food crisis is made worse by Russia's blocking Ukraine from exporting its millions of tons of grain. And also, as long as Russia continues the war, the United States will work with our partners to help lead a global response, because it's going to affect all parts of the world. At the same time, the United States must and will be a strong, steady, and enduring partner in the Indo-Pacific. We are in the Indo-Pacific. We are an Indo-Pacific power. I was once asked by, well, I won't go into it, but I was once asked by the leader of China why I kept talking about being an Indo-Pacific power. I said, because we are. We share the Pacific, one entire side of our country. And we have been deeply involved with all of you for a long time. As long as Russia continues this war, we're going to continue to be partners and lead a global response. And, you know, we're Indo-Pacific power, as I said. We're going to stand with you, our close democratic partners. And we're going to stand for the shared values that and the shared vision we all have. You know, shortly before Russia launched its invasion, my administration published our Indo-Pacific strategy to advance a free, open, connected, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific. Russia's assault on Ukraine only heightens the importance of those goals, the fundamental principles of international order, territorial integrity and sovereignty, international law, human rights must always be defended, regardless of where they're violated in the world. So the Quad has a lot of work ahead of us. It's the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of work to do, keeping this region peaceful and stable, tackling this pandemic and the next one, and addressing the climate crisis as referenced by our new colleague, ensuring that technologies of the future are governed according to our values, But in a short time, we've shown the Quad isn't just a passing fad. We mean business. We're here to get things done for the region, and I'm proud of what we're building together, and I look forward to our vital partnership flourishing and for many years to come. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you.
We're here to get things done for the region, and I'm proud of what we're building together, and I look forward to our...
All right, so those were the opening comments made by the four leaders of the Quad. We just heard from the American President Joe Biden, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister, and also the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who's just turned up at the Quad immediately after he was elected as the Prime Minister there. And several important issues were, of course, put forth on the table. The Indian Prime Minister stressing upon the importance of cooperation in this extremely challenging times, and also the American President stressing upon the importance of the world coming together to ensure that the war that is unfolding in Ukraine, Russia has costs that are imposed on it. And apart from this, remember, Quad is a loose forum of four nations and four democracies that's, of course, come together on a whole host of different issues. But the key among them is, of course, to counter the belligerence of China. And I still have Nicole Bernier-Schmitz, who is a political consultant. She's still live with us. Nicole, we just heard the opening remarks there by the four leaders. They spoke on a whole host of different issues. But the war in Ukraine, it appears, dominates the agenda of this Quad summit.
Yeah, I mean, you heard President Biden really focus most of his comments about what's going on in Ukraine, but that's not without its own shot at China, right? I mean, this is one of the biggest critiques that the Biden administration and that really the democracies across the world have been saying, which is that, you know, China's sort of embrace of Russia during this conflict is problematic. So even when he is discussing the war in Ukraine and Russia, that's still sending messages to China, which is obviously a main focus of the four countries, as they're, even though this is an informal alliance, one that is growing stronger and is clearly extremely important to all four countries, you know, as evidenced by the new PM of Australia hopping over there just so shortly after being sworn in.
Absolutely, and also the fact that, you know, at this point of time, the world is, of course, trying to isolate Russia as much as possible. The Western world, led by the United States, at least. Now, in this circumstance, with this kind of, you know, of these factors that are in play at this point of time, do you think the Quad leaders would want to actually woo China a little bit to try and see that the Chinese backing that the Russians seem to have in this war in Ukraine is dented to a certain extent?
It doesn't seem that it has been thus far. I mean, you can see, though, that China is growing more and more concerned about this alliance and what it is. They're getting harsher and more aggressive in their rhetoric around it, from trying to be dismissive in the beginning to, you know, sending up what they seem to be sending alerts now. So they're taking this seriously. And there's a lot of issues at play, right? I mean, obviously, the war in Ukraine and Russia is the top of mind, particularly for the United States president. But there's the maritime issues. There's where China is parking its ships in different ports that certainly the Australians are concerned about. There's climate change. So there's a lot of different issues to deal with, all of which China is at odds with with so much of the world on.
Absolutely. Now, one of the criticisms of the Quad is many people say that, listen, this is not a military alliance. This is, many people say, just a forum of four democracies who've come together with the stated objective of, countering China. But there is no treaty per se that binds all of these four nations together in the event of any hostility. Do you think that is the limitation of the Quad grouping?
I don't know that it's a limitation right now. In some ways, it might be their strength. There isn't this formal agreement, yet we see what a priority it still is for these four countries. And this cooperation is really that. It's a cooperation. It's a dedication and an understanding of the importance of what they're doing. If they feel that needs to become more formalized or have some more structure, then they can move forward with that.
All right. Nicole, do stay on with us. We'll slip into a short break. More news and updates will, of course, continue on the other side. This, of course, is a big meeting, the summit-level meeting of the Quad leaders who have gathered in Tokyo. We'll be getting you all the updates as details emerge. In Japan, the four leaders, the President of the United States, the Indian Prime Minister, the Australian Prime Minister, and also the Prime Minister of Japan are sitting across each other, and a whole host of different issues will, of course, be discussed. We'll slip into a short break. More updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned to WION. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.